Dr. Yehuda Schoenfeld is the head of the Department of Medicine at the Tel Aviv University since 1984. Dr. Schoenfeld founded and is heading the Center for Autoimmune Diseases at the largest hospital in Israel, the Sheba Medical Center. Recently, he has opened the new Zabludovic Center for Autoimmune Diseases. His topic is Asia, autoimmune syndrome induced by adjuvant, a new syndrome to be defined.
So now, how did I come to the story of the vaccines? Being an autoimmunologist and dealing with patients as well as doing basic research, I was called by lawyers to defend or to support some claims for vaccine-induced autoimmune diseases. And I saw it as a challenge. First of all, I'm the son of a lawyer. So I said, if I couldn't be a lawyer, I'm just a simple physician, I will try to imitate and to see if I can be a lawyer too. If I can convince them that vaccine can be one of the many factors which may induce autoimmune diseases. And I gained a lot of experience. I have appeared many times in the US courts. I appeared in other courts, including in my country and sometimes in Norway and so forth. So this gave the impetus to what we call the Asia, so it's called autoimmune syndromes, not one syndrome, induced by adjuvants, not by adjuvant, by one adjuvant. So it involves also vaccine-induced, and as you will see, autoimmune diseases, but eventually you will see that not necessarily they are autoimmune diseases, but it may be autoimmunity, and it may be an auto-inflammatory condition. And now I would like to start from the clinical point of view, and I will show you just 4 or 5 slides about one autoimmune condition. It's called vasculitis. Vasculitis is actually inflammation of the blood vessels. It's a systemic disease. It may involve the brain, the gastrointestinal tract, the lungs, the heart, the muscle, and so forth. So these are 4 presentations. These are just case reports, only case reports, in which the different authors believe that there is some kind of an association between a vaccine and the appearance of the inflammation of the muscles. And you can see that all of them involved, as you can see, different vaccine. Here it's the vasculitis which was induced by influenza vaccine. This is by typhoid vaccine. And here we had by BCG. These are another 4 cases, as you will see. All of them were caused by meningococcal vaccine. So this is, and you see the purpureal inflammation. These are spots which are caused by semi-clotting in the area, and all of them were generated by meningococcal vaccine. And last but not least, another different situation in which we have just inflammation of the superficial vessels, all of them caused by influenza vaccines. And this is just a summary that we have done about 4 adult patients. In all of them, there was a specific autoantibody, the pathogenic autoantibody which caused the inflammation. And these 4 cases actually join another 33 cases. So this is one of the problems, to convince the medical world that indeed vaccine may be one of the environmental factors which cause full-blown autoimmune condition, because most of the reports in the literature were just case reports, because it depends on the attention of the physician and if he takes the good past history to associate it with the vaccine. Now, this is the main diagram that I'm being recognized by that because of our first book that I published already in 1989, which is called The Mosaic of Autoimmunity. So you see that you need different genetics, and specifically the genetic markers, which are called HLA. There are other. I will not talk now about vitamin D, just to explain why when you go farther away from the equatorial, you have increased incidence of autoimmune disease. It's just the amount of exposure to the sun, the UV radiation, and the amount of vitamin D. And we do know today that the best way to prevent autoimmunity today, which is very cheap and quite effective, is to take tablets of vitamin D in high dosages, more than 2,000. And even myself, I take 2,000, and all my family take. It's good also for heart disease. It's good for to prevent cancer. It's good to prevent infections. So why not to take vitamin D? It's cheap, it has no side effect, and it's effective. And last but not least, here you can see the different aspects. And today I will speak especially about the adjuvants. So today we know that if you want to encounter an autoimmune disease or get an autoimmune disease, you need the combination of environmental factors together with a genetic background. Otherwise, you will not develop the disease. This is a paper that we have published recently in Lupus, which is called Adjuvant and Autoimmunity. These are my beautiful colleagues. And I would like just to describe what is adjuvant, even though there are experts here who knows better than I do what is adjuvant. And one of the famous one is alum. So the role of adjuvant is to enhance the immune system to the ingredient which is incorporated in this adjuvant. By the way, the most famous adjuvant in the world is a bacterial construct, which is what is called Freund adjuvant, which comes from Mycobacteria tuberculosis, from the bacteria which cause tuberculosis. So actually what they are supposed to do is to increase the immunogenicity to induce antibodies or to induce the immune system in the cell arm, because we have the humoral arm, the autoantibodies, and the cell arm. And somehow these adjuvants, what they do, they stimulate receptors, and there are many receptors. Right now we know that there are 13 different toll-like receptors in which the adjuvants can stimulate these receptors to enhance the immune reaction against the antigen. So that's actually what the adjuvants are doing. Now, interestingly enough, there is a guy, you can see him here finishing the marathon run in New York. He's a very well-established professor, rheumatologist in the USA, and all his career was achieved by publishing what adjuvant, how they cause autoimmune diseases. So what he did, he took just different animal species and just vaccinated and immunized them with different adjuvant. So he summarized his work in Cell 2009, but he had many, many papers about it. And what he was able to show that just by injecting this adjuvant, he can induce any autoantibodies that exist in the world, any autoantibodies. There was an historical study which was done by Noel Rose, who is regarded as one of the fathers of autoimmune diseases. When he was young and beautiful, what he did in 1958, he took thyroglobulin. It means he took an autoantigen, a component of our body, and emulsified it in incomplete Freund adjuvant. So it's not the complete adjuvant, it's incomplete Freund adjuvant. And he was able to show that the rabbits that he immunized with the adjuvant, they developed autoantibodies but not disease. But once he added the complete adjuvant, as he did here, the rabbits developed actually the full disease. Can vaccine react as adjuvant and induce autoimmunity? So in any case, what is the evidence that indeed the vaccine can cause rheumatological diseases, because most of the rheumatological diseases are autoimmune diseases like SLE. So the first evidence was in 1948 when a student nurse was given the typhoid and paratyphoid vaccine, and she developed eventually SLE. There were 3 cases very similar to this one. Then there were more wide range of autoimmune phenomena reported in different vaccines, like the appearance of different autoantibodies, and where, Bert, I ask you today why it's only anti-beta 2, but my question was not directed why it's only beta 2, because I believe that if you will examine your children, you will find other autoantibodies. But why the attack is by not beta 2, by anti-beta cells antibodies. So there is some evidence which nobody can oppose it, even among those who do not believe that vaccine can cause autoimmune disease. And this is the report, again, in the unknown journal, New England Journal of Medicine, 1998, when the swine influenza vaccine was given, and there was a significant increase in Guillain-Barré syndrome. I would mention Guillain-Barré syndrome is a neurological condition of paralysis of the legs, or sometimes it goes to the upper part of the body. And there was no question about it. Actually, there was a second paper in New England Journal of Medicine about 10 or 15 years afterward, 10 years afterward, showing that when they changed something in the vaccine, there was less induction of Guillain-Barré syndrome, but still it was higher than in the regular population where you know the prevalence of Guillain-Barré syndrome. Also with the polio vaccine, we know that it induces transverse myelitis. There was no question about it. This was recognized also by the National Academies of the United States and by Institute of Medicine. It is well recognized and quite prevalent that subjects who receive the DTP and the rubella vaccine will develop arthritis. Actually, we know that sometimes patients with rubella, the native rubella, they develop arthritis. So it's not surprising that if you take this virus ingredient, you put it into adjuvant, you will enhance this reaction or maybe even increase the incidence of this arthritis. Now, how do you show causality? You need to go to animal models, and we have heard about it in the morning. There are several classical animal models. First of all, in dogs, then in mice, in rats. And a veterinarian noted that dogs, after being vaccinated, they complained about different complaints, or maybe their owners complained about different complaints. And when he examined 20 dogs that he immunized with different vaccines, he found really a panoply of autoantibodies. One of them, for instance, antilaminin, which is a classical autoantibody in SLE. This is, by the way, my dog, who was not vaccinated in this case. But let's go to the salmon study. This was a wonderful study in this farm-grown salmon, which was published in Journal of Immunology, quite a respectful journal. And they did all the groups that even I believe Beatrix will be happy with the controls. And what they found that the salmons who were vaccinated with the vaccine developed different autoantibodies. Among them, you can see very notorious antibodies like anti-double-stranded DNA, which is associated with SLE, and anti-beta-2 GPI, which is associated with clotting in the anti-phospholipid syndrome. So when he PM'd his salmons, he found remarkable pathological lesion, as you can see here, with thrombi. I spoke about coagulation, and also kidney lesion, which resemble very much the kidney lesion that you can see in SLE. So then he published another paper in the journal Lupus, and he was able to show that some of the salmons have changes in their bones, or joints, which resemble very much the Panus-like changes that you can see in rheumatoid arthritis. Another model, a very nice model, is in alopecia areata. It's baldness, but you don't have hair anywhere in your body. And I have to say that the NIH gave a lot of money to study this peculiar autoimmune condition because it's very accessible for biopsies, because it's in the skin, so you can analyze it. And indeed, the autoantigen was found. There were many reports to show that the alopecia developed following hepatitis B vaccine. So somebody used a model, an animal model for alopecia, a natural, spontaneous model which developed the alopecia areata, and vaccinated the rats. And as you can see, the rats who were vaccinated with hepatitis B developed the alopecia earlier than the placebo group. By the way, we are doing very similar huge study in our laboratory in which we take lupus mice and we vaccinate them just to see if the kidney lesion and the other lesions just appear earlier than the non-vaccinated. Now, the second point that I wanted to talk about is the temporal association. As I mentioned, and here I had a lot of criticism about what Dr. Pawelski said, in regular immune system, we have the primary response, we have the secondary response, and this is the basis for the vaccine, that the secondary response is much more stronger, and this protects you. And this is the idea idea behind the vaccine. Nobody mentioned it here. And so what happened is that the secondary response is quicker, and usually it takes about the first response about 2 to 3 weeks. And this is the idea why the judges and the special master are looking for this period of 21 days to show the cause and effect relationship. It's 3 weeks. But we know that, as I mentioned before, and this is again a paper in the unknown journal, New England Journal of Medicine, showing that autoantibodies may proceed by years. There is some kind of a long incubation time, as well as there are other studies which I show here. For instance, when you follow patients who were vaccinated for flu and you measure autoantibodies, some of them appear only after 6 months. So there is some kind of an incubation period of the vaccine in which they induce the autoantibody. These are studies that when hepatitis B vaccine were shown to associate with multiple sclerosis, they were criticized very much. But if you follow these patients after 3 years, a paper that was published in Neurology, you can see that after 3 years there was a close association between those who developed the hepatitis, developed multiple sclerosis, and those who received the hepatitis B virus. The same story appeared also with the papilloma virus vaccine. We have talked about it too much today, and you can see in the paper recently in JAMA in 2009, they showed that only after 2.5 years of follow-up, the patient developed, and I want to draw your attention to Guillain-Barré syndrome, transfer myelitis. So you can see that most of the manifestation were neural manifestation. So I will skip this and I will skip this, and let's go to the possible mechanism. What are the mechanisms by which vaccine can induce autoimmunity? There are different aspects of the vaccine, and somebody already talked about it. We have the antigens of the bacteria, of the viruses, mimicking the regular virus, and by that also mimicking some of the ingredients of our body constituents. But there are also the preservatives, and we have also the adjuvant. And as I mentioned, there are many mechanisms by which adjuvant increase the immune reactivity. So I went to my colleagues in my laboratory and I asked them, listen, go to the literature, screen the literature, and find which vaccine was never ever reported to associate with any autoimmune effect or autoinflammatory. And they came with one vaccine, and it's Pneumovax. And Pneumovax is the only vaccine which does not contain adjuvant. Isn't it interesting? There is another aspect, because we'll hear an extensive talk from Romain. When I read his papers, I had another inspiration, because he showed very clearly that the macrophage myofasciitis is associated with the adjuvant, and specifically the alum. And these are some pictures which I've taken from his book, but I would like you to draw against your attention to the clinical manifestation. Myalgias, chronic weakness, severe weakness, and sometimes also neurological manifestation. If I remember well, in your first paper, you published that 1/3 of the patients developed eventually multiple sclerosis. And the time period, again, was not 21 days or 2 months or 3 months. It came up to 8 years. So it shows that there is a long incubation time. This is the paper that I discussed with you about the appearance of macrophage myofasciitis in children. It came out from Israel. So we have infections. We have vaccines. We have the Gulf War syndrome, and most probably also chronic fatigue syndrome or the sick building syndrome. What they have in common is the adjuvant, the chronic stimulation of the immune system, which induces most probably cytokines, which are responsible for the chronic fatigue, and they are also infiltrating into the brain to induce the damage in the brain. Thank you very much for your attention.
Asleep amidst the trees, bats all a swaying in the breeze. But one soul lies on hugs and rays.
Nice tune. Been a while since I heard it last.
Folk have forgotten it.
Got other things on their mind.
Things like me.
They paid me for you.
For the witcher, brave and bold, paid in coin of gold. He'll chop and slice you, cut and dice you, eat you up whole.
And I will prove it.
Eat you whole. Asleep amidst the trees, bats all a swaying in the breeze. But one soul lies anxious, wide awake, fearing all manner of ghouls, hags, and wraiths.
Nice tune. Been a while since I heard it last.
Folk have forgotten it.
Got other things on their mind.
Things like me.
They paid me for you.
and slice, you cut and dice, you eat, you uphold,
and I will prove it.
lead you home. Wolves asleep amidst the trees, bats all a-swaying in the breeze. But one soul lies anxious, wide awake, fearing all manner of goose, hags, and wraiths.
Nice tune. Been a while since I heard it last.
Folk have forgotten it.
Got other things on their mind.
Things like me.
They paid me for you.
For the witcher, brave and bold, paid in coin of gold. He'll chop and slice, you cut and dice, you eat, you uphold,
and I will prove it.
lead you